You see that balloon hanging back there? That's the balloon that the Federal Reserve Bank, the Bank of England, blows the economy in. That little gondola there is us hanging beneath this balloon. So it's been pumping all this fake money into the system. That balloon is coming down. Go to a coin dealer and give them $5 and you buy one of these. And if that doesn't fry the brain cells between this year and this year, you're like, why am I paying $5 for a quarter? And that's where it starts, Brian. You got to start doing something different.
Well, Robert, you famously said the difference between a rich person and a poor person is their relationship with fear. And maybe that has something to do with that transformation.
My rich dad had a rental apartment. He says, I want you to go collect rent. So, Brian, you want to talk about transformation? I'm a 10-year-old kid knocking on doors saying, your rent's due. The scientific term is called bullshit. I never heard such bullshit in my life. These guys had an excuse for everything. Well, you guys, you don't know. I'll have it next time. I can't. It's guys like you. You exploit the poor. I'm 10 years old. I'm just collecting the rent. I'm gonna go back to my rich dad. He says, "Did you learn something?" I went, "Oh my God!" And then I went home. I heard the same words, and that's when I transformed, Brian. I said, I'm not going to be like my parents. I love my parents. I had a great mom, great dad. If you're raised by great moms and great dads, you got 99% of the battle. But the question is, what did they teach you? And what did they tell you education was? That's the question.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs, sharing our vulnerability, overcoming our fears, transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is...
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Robert Kiyosaki, the entrepreneur, investor, motivational speaker, financial expert, and author of the globally renowned bestseller, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the #1 personal finance book of all time. Robert, you have dedicated your life to challenging the way tens of millions of people around the world think about money and investing. You have been outspoken in your belief that our education system is failing us and that much of what people believe has been designed to keep them ignorant and poor. For the past 12 months, you have warned us about the prospect of an economic crash that will be greater than anything we've ever known before, one that will leave people living in poverty. You believe that the Democrats are destroying America, the dollar is finished, and the middle classes are the ones who will suffer most in 2023. You expect to see stock, bond, and real estate markets crash and believe those who can should invest in gold, silver, and Bitcoin. Or as you would say, Robert, if you can print it, I don't want it. Robert, it's always a pleasure. Welcome back to London Real.
Well, thank you, Brian. If I could give a shout out to you, is that, well, first of all, this is my England shirt here.
Love it.
And I was there for the Rugby World Cup at Twickenham in 2015. But I would just say that Brian Rose is a real human being. He and I come from the same bolt of cloth. I think we were talking before we went on air. We were born for this time. It is a time for transformation. If you understand, it's different between education and transformation. And one of the things I'm upset about, as you know, I've always said, why doesn't our schools teach us about money? And we're talking about your last prime minister, the shortest prime minister in history. And I thought about her because this is one of my books here, Who Stole My Pensions? And when she tried to, I don't know what the heck she did, but she wasn't there long enough to even read my book. But Our money system is so screwed up, and we still don't teach anything about money. I can't believe it. And you and I have been saying this for how many years now? You've been to Arizona, I've been to London with you. But this, Brian, we better start transforming, not just getting educated.
Yeah, I agree. And this does feel like our time. I mean, you know, when everything got crazy in 2020, it was probably one of the best years we've ever had here because, you know, Robert, that didn't faze us at all. We didn't blink an eye. I didn't miss a day of work. We were in here broadcasting, putting out the truth, going head to head against these trillion-dollar tech companies, not letting them censor us, putting out these messages. And you know, Robert, when I tell my students in my academy, when I quote your lines into them, when I say, you know, poor people work for money and rich people make money work for them, when I talk about how your story when you raised your hand and said, when are you going to teach us about money in the education system? And they said, no, no, no. Everybody just, they get it. They know you're right. And this is the time, like you said, to transform. People have to completely rethink what they thought they knew about money. And that's why it's so great to have people like you, Robert. And everyone's looking to people like you in these markets because you've been talking about this for decades.
And you know what, Brian, this is 2023. Rich Dad Poor Dad is still number one after 25 years. And I flunked out of school because I can't write. Can you imagine that? And all I do is write about. So I kept asking the question. I said, why don't they teach us about money? What are they teaching us today? You know, about wokeism and Black Lives Matter and gender bending. What about money? You know, I just can't believe our education system has gone so corrupt. And today, the number one debt for most young people are student loans. And they come out of school and they really can't even find a job that pays them that much. I mean, it makes ROI, return on investment, a college education doesn't make sense. There's no ROI on it. So when you think about that, it's our school system that's criminal too.
Yeah, you're always on the front lines really pointing that out. I know making a lot of teachers unions uncomfortable, but I'm glad you do. And you sent me that message earlier and I saw you, I mean, number one ranked after 25 years as a book with you just asking some simple questions. You know, I tell the story when I went and saw you in Phoenix about 5 or 6 years ago and we sat down for that epic interview, Robert, that's probably been watched now 40, 50 million times. I've seen it translated in 12, 13 different languages. There's one, I told you one, that we're both speaking Russian in that interview. And that was epic, but I reread Rich Dad Poor Dad on the flight out to Phoenix. And man, I mean, by 15 pages in, there's just something about it that feels life transforming, as if what you're saying is, it's almost biblical, Robert, because it's the human DNA. You're explaining how we create value and how we perceive value. And it's never been taught to us before, and you do it through this, you know, allegory of these two dads. It's a beautiful piece of work and still super relevant, and they're still not teaching about money. So I guess we're going to have to, right?
Well, I think, like, you know, I watch you doing your running and all this stuff. It inspires me because I'm lazy as heck. But you and I are about transformation. There's a difference between a rich person and a poor person. Giving them money is not going to do it. You know, I can give a poor person all the money in the world, and they'll still be poor. You give a crook all the money in the world, they'll still be a crook. You know, and today we have the Biden crime family in place here. I mean, I can't believe these guys. And they got top secret documents lying all over the place. Americans are shooting everybody all over the place. I'm watching, you and I are watching the world come apart. And if we don't go through transformation, no more just go to school and get a job. We've got to go beyond that, Brian. And so I think that's what you and I, as now the senior citizens of the Zoom world, that's what we're pushing for. You cannot just give somebody money or send them to school. They've got to transform.
Well, Robert, you famously said the difference between a rich person and a poor person is their relationship with fear. And maybe that has something to do with that transformation, because if you're not willing to transform, which means you have to go into a fear, if you really want to transform, is that what that comes down to? Is it about going into those fears and pushing yourself to become someone new?
Well, it kind of goes back to education and transformation. My benefit was I didn't go to a traditional school. I got nominations to Naval Academy and Merchant Marine Academy in New York. I went to the Merchant Marine Academy because we're the highest paid graduates in the world. This is in 1965. So 1965, I check in at the Merchant Marine Academy, Kings Point, New York. And my economics teacher asked me to read this book here. I'm going, this is economics? And my economics teacher was a West Point graduate, U.S. Military Academy graduate, and he flew B-17s out of England into Germany.
Ooh.
And he got shot down twice.
Wow.
And he had to escape and evade, and he got captured once and all this stuff. I'm talking to him. I said, why are we reading this book here? The Communist Manifesto. And so he says, because it's economics. There's a war on right now between Marxism or communism and capitalism. And our school system is run by Marxists. And when I read this book, I hate to say this, my family are Marxist. They said, like, I know this is England. Labor unions run the world. And my poor dad was the head of the teachers union for the state of Hawaii. And I'm reading this book here going, oh my God. And then he believes in taxes. And as you know, the rich don't pay taxes anyway. But my poor dad's telling you should pay your taxes. You should pay your taxes. I'm going, what? And so I came back in 1965. I was a changed human being. I said, I'm not going to listen to my school teachers anymore because they're Marxists. So what I'm saying is blasphemy. And then in 2020, I came up with this book here, Who Stole My Pension? And Jolly England made a twitch because your pensions almost went bust a little while ago. Right, when they had to pivot the interest rate stuff.
Yeah, they got a little dicey. Well, I think you famously said that communism is the only government that kills people, and so I think a lot of people, when they first hear you talking about communism and capitalism and money, they don't see how they're related, but they're highly related. And one thing the blockchain and the crypto space taught me is if you look at those Bitcoin maxis, and I don't love all the Bitcoin maxis, but I appreciate them because they say, look, if you really want freedom of speech, you have to have freedom of your money. And if we can have the freedom of the money, we can have freedom of speech. And then I had another guy named Yatsu of Animoca Brands who is big into the metaverse. And he says, if you don't own property, even your digital assets, if you don't own those, then you have no rights, which means you have no freedom of speech, which means you have nothing. So Robert, you've been saying this for a long time. It really does come down to this, doesn't it?
It does. And I wrote this book here. My latest book is called The Capitalist Manifesto.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just, I'm so disturbed of what's happening in our school systems. I'll say it again. Brian Rose is a man of transformation. We work for the same thing. You just don't take a poor person and give them money. You don't take a criminal, unless I go to politics, of course. But you know what I'm saying? We've got to start transforming. And maybe let me give you an example, okay? I was at, you had my friend Jim Rickards on, and he's one of the smartest guys I know.
Oh, yeah. Love him.
But this here is a U.S. quarter. And if you're going to study money, you have to know the history of money. So this is a 1964 quarter. The date's important because in 1964, President Johnson took the silver out of money. Okay. And so when you turn, so I was 17 years old in 1964. I remember looking at this quarter going, it's copper. How can they cheat us like this? And there's a law called Gresham's Law. And Gresham's Law states that when fake money comes into the system, good money goes into hiding. So I'm a kid, 17 years old. I'm looking at this quarter. This is fake money. And what I did, I used to go caddy, make a buck carrying golf clubs. I'd go to the bank and I'd pull out all the fake quarters with the copper, and I'd keep the real copper. And I stuff it in my bag. So by the time I went to school in New York in 65, I had a bag of real quarters and dimes and half dollars. When I came back from school I went away. I came back in 1965. my mother had spent my quarters. And I said, then I had this blinding transformation. This is true. Poor people don't know the difference between real money and fake money. And that's why we have the problem. So I'll tell you one more story. So I'm at Safeway at the salad bar over there. I'm kind of the salad bar guru now. See, a lot of Americans know we're in trouble. They know we're in trouble. So there's the Hispanics and blacks and whites. And they say, what do we do now? You know, I mean, what's happening? So I just happened to have this little quarter here. It says 1964. I said, this here is real money. And I held up $3 like this. I said, give me $3 and I'll give you this. And these little women just went, they love me. I love them. They're serving me my coleslaw, you know, and my chicken salad. And they're going, well, why would we give you $3 for this? I said, because this is real and this is fake. So Brian, in many ways, I was talking to my mother, you know what I mean, years later. And they go, oh, I said, okay, give me $2 and I'll give you this quarter. And their brains were mishmash. You see, what happened is our school system has taught us to work for fake money. Right. Go to school, get a job, work hard, save money, get out of debt, and invest in the stock market. I don't do any of that stuff. And so they sat there, they still haven't got it. They say, why would I give you this? I said, because the real price is this. This quarter, the pre-64 quarter, is worth $5. And there, Ryan, it was transformation. That's transformation. They could not get that this is fake.
Right.
And this is real here.
Right.
Can you get what I'm saying to you right now?
Yeah, I get it. Because
you get it.
I get it.
That's what Rickards is saying too.
Yeah, I get it because that quarter represents silver that has value before it started being fake, kind of like before the dollar was off the gold standard. And maybe I just had an observation now, Robert, is that all fiat currency systems
are fake.
Are fake, and they're based, and they only survive if a certain class of the population is uneducated, right? If the poor are stupid.
So Brian, that's why you and I are brothers. We've got to transform people. We just can't educate them. We just can't send them to school. We can't say vote for Republicans or Democrats or Tories or liberals or conservatives. It's a matter of transformation that you've been ripped off by your government. And so after 65, when I read this book here, I was in Vietnam in 66. I'm a student on board a ship. And I saw communism at work. Brian, that was transformation again. I went, oh my God. I saw people killing people and all this and going, oh my God. So what happened was in 69, I graduated from the Merchant Marine Academy. We're the highest paid graduates in the world. Starting pay for my classmates was $120,000 a year.
That's amazing.
So 1969, that was a lot of money. A lot of money. But I declined it because I said, I'm going to join the U.S. Marine Corps and go fight. Because I was so disturbed by what I read about this Communist Manifesto, which is why I wrote this book here, Capitalist Manifesto. And so in 1972, I'm flying in, I was a Marine helicopter pilot on an aircraft carrier, and we're fighting, the North Vietnamese were running south on us. And that exactly as you said, Brian, this is gold. In 71, President Nixon took this out of this. And what that allows, so we had more fake money. And when you have fake money, you can print as much as you like. So what happened in 71 and 64, this is real silver. This is real silver here. They could print as much as they like, and it blew the economy into this huge bubble. So our generation, the baby boomer generation from 71 on, we've had it the easiest of any generation in history. You see that balloon hanging back there?
Yeah.
That's the balloon that the Federal Reserve Bank, the Bank of England, blows the economy in. That little gondola there is us hanging beneath this balloon. So it's been pumping all this fake money into the system. And as our friend Jim Rickards said, we've actually been in a depression since 2007. And instead of letting the thing crash, they kept pumping money and interest rates going down, interest rates going up and all this. But now the balloon is deflating. So here it is, January 2023, that balloon is coming down. So when I was listening to your interview with Jim Rickards, I was going, oh my God. And this is the lesson. He said it clearly. He says, this is a global recession. And the trouble is the balloon is coming down. And so they're trying to pump it back up again by printing and all the stuff they do, but they can't stop it. So he says, technically, we've been in a depression. It's a definition of the words, the words become flesh. So we've been in a depression since 2007. And a depression means subpar growth. So instead of growing at 3%, what Rickards is saying, we're growing at 2%. That balloon is coming down. And so, ladies and gentlemen, the reason I love this man here, Brian Rose, I love being on this program, because we've got to transform. You just don't go to school and get a job and save money. This is trash. So that's where the transformation takes place. And so, my friend, I thank you for being my friend all these years, allowing me to say what I say, even though people don't like what I say. Like Wall Street won't, they don't let me come on Wall Street because I said, I don't touch stocks.
Yeah.
You can print it. I don't want it.
Yeah.
Well, you know what I mean? I don't want this stuff. You can print it.
I mean, you just got a lot of people's attention with what you said there. And so my question for you, Robert, is what is the one or two actions that someone should take if you just got their attention? What should they do differently now, knowing that that's trash that you're holding up, those greenbacks?
Well, action speaks louder than words. So I tell people this thing here is a pre-64 quarter. I don't know what it is in England, I'm afraid, but I would be looking for real money. So I said, go to a coin dealer and give them $5 and you buy one of these. And if that doesn't fry the brain cells between this year and this year, you're going, why am I paying $5 for a quarter? And that's where it starts, Brian. You got to start doing something different. And you say, I'm being cheated by my own government. And that's what happened for me in 65. Because I went to the academy in New York. I read this book here. I realize my parents are communists. They're good people. They believe in unions. They believe in paying taxes. They believe in all this stuff. I'm going, and they think they're rich or evil. I'm going, wait a minute. You guys are the evil ones. You're not teaching us anything. So that's where the story of Rich Dad, Poor Dad came out, back in 1997. I said, I've got to say something. So I wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad, because it was my rich dad, my best friend's father, who was teaching me to be a capitalist. Don't depend on anybody. So I was just talking to a friend whose daughter is going in college, and all she wants is tenure. I just want to get a job with tenure.
Oh, that's the worst.
And she's going to teach our kids.
I know, that's the worst. That's just the worst. And so in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, your rich dad is teaching you kind of to create capital, to create value, to create a business, right? And not to wait for that paycheck, which is, again, poor people working for money, that drug addiction that most people live on, that waiting for that handout every 2 weeks or every month. And it conditions to inaction. It conditions them to, not create value. But as I remember, your rich dad is teaching you, he's forcing you. And as a kid, you're like, I just want my money. And he's like, no, you have to create the value. You have to, and you started finding these creative ways of creating these small businesses, as I remember. And is that what you encourage people to do? First, maybe own a real asset, but then to get creative of how to create a value or create a business?
To be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
You and I are entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Are you looking for job security, Brian?
No, it's the last thing on my mind.
No, it's-
I haven't had a
but
job
teachers are.
in 12 years. Yeah, yeah. This concept of tenure sounds crazy to me. It sounds very communist. It's like, wait a second, that means I don't have to do anything and I'll have a job forever. It's like, but you need to create value every day. That's what we all need to be thinking about every day. This seems like the opposite of what we want to teach people, right?
Correct. And that's why it's not about education, it's transformation, or be very careful who your teachers are.
Yeah.
You know, because just before I met my rich dad, I'm 7 years old now, and I'm going to Sunday school, you know, the Hilo Methodist Church. And this young Sunday school teacher's trying to teach me something, and all I could think about is money. I was a little money kid as a little.
Me too.
Before rich dad, she goes, okay, tell me this. Why were the three wise men wise? She's probably about 25 years old, you know. And I raised my hand. I said, because you were rich. And she goes, wrong answer. I said, she says, why do you say they were rich? I said, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. They were rich. She goes, that's not the answer. I said, well, why were they wise then? She says, because they sought the best teacher. Brian, that was transformational. You know, and that's when I went in search of a rich dad.
Wow.
That's transformation,
That is
Brian.
transformational. But I guess you both were right, because you saw them, they owned real assets, so that was good at least, right? No fiat currency they had on them. They had frankincense and myrrh, and then looking for good teachers.
Yeah.
Yep.
But the thing that they're looking for, I'm not pumping religion. You know, I believe in freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and who you sleep with is none of my business. But anyway, I said, I better start checking out my teachers. Transformation, Brian.
Yeah.
When you question who your teachers are, and a lot of it's our mother and father.
Yeah.
What did they teach us?
Yeah.
That's transformation.
I remember in the book how even at 7 years old, you know, the system was already ingrained in you. Even though I don't know if you've even had a job before, it was so foreign in your 7-year-old brain that you wouldn't get that payment, that you had to create value. And that's now that I remember fascinating, because what do they say? I don't know who discovered water, but it wasn't a fish. And so you're born into this system with those parents from education. So how would you know how to create value? You only know what everyone else knows, which is to wait for the paycheck. So even at 7, you had to kind of retrain your brain and transform yourself. Right.
That's transformation, Brian.
Yeah.
Ask yourself these. Were you told, go to school, get a job, work hard, save money, pay taxes, get out of debt, and invest in the stock market?
Yeah.
That's what 99% of the people are taught.
Yeah.
You understand that when you can question what's going on between this year and this year, that's where transformation begins. And they look at your heart. You say, I don't want to do that. You know, I love my mom. I love my mom and dad, but I don't want to be like them. You know, it's a tough. But the thing that really changed it was, again, in Sunday school, not religious. You know, I believe in a higher spirit and power and all this stuff, but I believe in freedom of religion, because when I started studying with my rich dad, my best friend's father, around 10, the deal I made with him was he would teach me about money, but I had to work for free. I went, what? And he says, because if I pay you, you think like an employee. I want you to think like an entrepreneur. And this is all transformational, because the transformation is going through these ear and that ear, you know, just rattling back and forth.
Yeah.
Just like when I held up this here and I said, give me $5 for this.
Yeah.
And anyway, so he says, this is your first assignment, not your first assignment, one of my first assignments. My rich dad had rental apartments, rental houses, little Quonset huts, you know, after World War II type stuff. He says, I want you to go collect rent. So, Brian, you want to talk about transformation? I'm a 10-year-old kid knocking on doors saying, your rent's due. Brian, the scientific term is called bullshit. I never heard such bullshit in my life. These guys had an excuse for everything. Well, you guys, you don't know. I'll have it next. I can't. It's guys like you. You guys, you take advantage of us. You exploit the poor. I'm 10 years old. I'm just collecting the rent, and I'm going, holy mackerel. So I go home. I'm gonna go back to my rich dad. He says, "Did you learn something?" I went, "Oh my God!" And then I went home. I heard the same words. The rich exploit people. They take advantage of people. All they care is about money. And that's when I transformed, Brian.
Wow.
I said, I'm not going to be like my parents. That's a tough one.
Yeah.
I love my parents. I had a great mom, great dad. If you're raised by great moms and great dads, you got 99% of the battle.
Yeah.
But the question is, what did they teach you? And what did they tell you education was? That's the question.
And that education, the way they were teaching you, would ultimately lead to you being the one that rents something and not owns the asset. And you could see that going to collect that. It was a completely different mentality, lower energy, people might say, desperation, someone that will be living paycheck to paycheck the rest of their life by design because of their philosophy, not because of anything else, right?
Yes.
Right. And then they're taught that the rich are the greedy ones, they have all the assets, the da-da-da-da-da-da, and that's the narrative that allows the system to continue.
Yeah.
And you got to see that.
And they go to school, they get a job,
Right.
look for tenure. And, it's like when this is a 1964 quarter. And when I showed those women behind the Safeway salad counter, I said, will you give me, I only asked for $3. I didn't even ask for $5. It's worth $5. I said, give me $3. They couldn't get it. See, the transformation is going, what the hell am I doing? Well, you've been taught to work for fake money.
Right.
And you buy fake stocks and you fake bonds and everything's printed. And who controls the show then? Is Wall Street, the Treasury, and the government control your life. And you and I don't put up with that. That's why we're entrepreneurs.
Yeah, and you wrote a lot about this in your book, Fake, as well, which you talked about when you were here in the studio. And so invest in real assets is step one for some people watching for the first time that are getting the red pill from you. Next is work for free, which is another way of saying become an entrepreneur and build something of value. That's the other thing people should do. Create something of value.
But the most important thing is who your teachers.
Right.
When you had Jim Records on, he's a great teacher.
Yeah.
That is one smart dude.
Very, very much.
I have tremendous respect for Records.
Yeah.
He's my teacher. You're my teacher. So the best thing about this YouTube stuff, or whatever, and Elon Musk shutting down Twitter, man, he was my teacher. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
All those communists in Silicon Valley. I mean, he took them on and said, all right, Elon, go get him, But we're sitting here, Brian, all of us, we're the biggest transformation in world history. But Ricketts is correct. We're in a global recession. And the Federal Reserve banks, the Bank of England, Bank of Japan, the Fed, they can't stop it. So we're already in a depression, technically. But this crash is coming so big. And that's why, I started this show. Look at what's happening in America today. I showed you this here. This is a Dirty Harry gun. It's a 44 Magnum. And it goes, make my day. This is the most powerful handgun in the world.
And it'll blow your head clean off.
They're killing everybody in America. And this is my theory. It's my little cheap 25-cent theory. I'm not a psychiatrist I said, I think because people know this is fake, they're desperate. That's my theory. It's only a theory. But people are so uncertain right now because they know that balloon is coming down. This is the biggest change in world history, Brian. And that's why it's an honor to be working with you, because you and I have been pushing for transformation, not just education. That we need to transform who we are, how we treat other people. How do we survive today? Because as more people are uncertain about their future, they go nuts.
Yeah, I think you're right. There is a correlation there. I mean, last 3 days, there's been school shootings all over America. I don't know how many dead, but it's a lot, 18 or 30, I don't know what it is. And you think it's related somehow to the fake money?
Well, that's my theory, because when you feel uncertain, your synapses aren't working, emotions are up, you're concerned, irritable. You're not sane, should I say. And you're looking for something to blame. And I'm not Republican or Democrat. Trump is my friend. But you have this guy, Joe Biden, what he did the first time he got elected, 2020, and I'm an oil guy. I went to the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy. I drive oil tankers with Standard Oil. So I'm an oil man. The first thing he did was he cut off the Keystone XL pipeline. I don't buy oil stock. I don't have no Chevron stocks. I don't have Exxon. I don't have BP. But I do own the oil. If you can print it, I don't want it. I want the oil. So I'm selling oil. I had oil wells in North Dakota, Louisiana, and Texas. So oil, when Biden came to office, was $30 a barrel. It's a good, fair price, The moment he cut off the Keystone pipeline, oil went from $30 to $130. See, because energy drives civilization. Let me say it again. Energy drives civilization. That was his first act. And I knew he and Kamala are probably communists. And when they did that, they took the middle class of America, made them poor. Does that make sense to you? Because you're standing there filling up your SUV and you're watching your gas meter going like this, and you're going, how am I going to pay for this? It makes you nuts.
Yeah.
You know something is wrong. So oil went from 30 to 130. I got extremely rich. I am getting extremely rich because I have good education, but not from school. But I'm getting richer. I'm going, but everybody else in the world is getting poorer. So that's why I think these are coming out. And you look at the states where most of the violence is coming from, they're very liberal states. Like California has the toughest gun laws going, but that's where the shootings are taking place. I live in Arizona where I can walk down the street with this and they don't care. As you notice, this is the Wild West yet. So it's a matter of what's going on between this year in your heart. So when Biden cut off that XL pipeline, I knew that what you and I are doing, it's about transformation, not education. We've got to become more aware. And so that's my concern. So I was happy for about 3 days. I was going, oil went from $30 to $130. I think it's about $80 today. Inflation is coming down. I said, give me a break. 30 to 80, that's not much of a difference. Energy drives civilization. The higher the price of energy, the less civilized we become, Brian. And that's what Biden did. Plus, he opens up the gate for all of these. 250,000 people came across the border. And so then the governors of Texas and Arizona, they're shipping them to New York and Chicago and all this stuff. We're at war in America, Brian. This is a civil war. I'm sure you can see it, can't you?
Yeah, we can see it. We can see it. And that tension slowly makes its way over here 5 years later, but we don't have the same issues you have there. But I can see it, I can feel it, and I see what's happening. It's hard to recognize the country I grew up in. Luckily, my grandparents were both from Arizona. I spent time in Arizona. I shot guns in Arizona. I shot a 44 Magnum like that when I was 10. Also,
you were born with one of these in your hand.
Yeah, and also, interestingly enough, Robert, both of my grandparents were, well, one set was, my grandpa Benedict was a cattleman out of Phoenix, Arizona, and my other grandpa was a farmer who grew potatoes and barley. So they were entrepreneurs by definition. So I think it was just in the blood around me that I knew these guys had to create and had created their lives. They never waited for a paycheck for anybody because, again, they were homesteaders back in the day. I mean, one of my grandpas, the Dust Bowl of Oklahoma, he went west to Arizona. When my grandma drove me around Phoenix, Robert, you'll love this story. She drove me by a field one time and she looked out the window and she said, "You see that field?" She said, "Your grandpa dug stumps out of the ground for 2 years before he could plant a crop." And I think I had been complaining about the air conditioning a little earlier, and I just zipped my mouth for about 2 hours. And again, there's a man he worked for free for those 2 years, digging stumps out of the ground because he was creating something, capital.
Yes.
And he never had to wait for a paycheck for anybody. And he created it all through his own work, and he hired workers. And so it was somehow that part of my education. I'm sure that's a bit of who I am today. I got lucky in that standpoint,
Well, it goes back to education.
Yeah.
Like when my Sunday school teacher said, "What made the three wise men wise?" She said, "They always sought the best teacher." And today, with the power of YouTube and what we're doing today, this gives you access to some of the best teachers in the world. Like you have Jim Records on. I'm going, he's a great teacher. He's my teacher.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm 11 years in this on London Real, Robert, and part of this it's me seeking teachers. I have the best seat in the house. I always joke, if the cameras were off, I wouldn't care because I get the best education I've ever had in my life. And I went to some great schools. I spent 4 years at MIT studying mechanical engineering. It was great. But I'll take 4 years in this chair over that any day of the week because I get the best in the world. And the good news is everybody else can watch, but I do get the greatest education. So it's a good point, Robert. We want to always seek a teacher. And with YouTube these days, they're out there. You can find them.
Yeah.
And they'll help you transform. You mentioned Elon. I'm curious what you saw when you watch him go into Twitter. First of all, treat it like a business. So he sacks half the people, he's cutting costs, then exposing everything with the Twitter files. Some said he didn't buy a company, he bought a crime scene. What have you made of all of that? For me, it's been very entertaining to watch him walk in there and take a flamethrower to the lackadaisical attitude and the wokeness. But what do you see, Robert?
Well, again, I go back to 1965. I go to New York, I read this book here. If you read this book said what it's been 1848. And he says that communism would take over America in 2 stages. So stage 1 happened in 1930. In 1930, Berlin, the Frankfurt School, sent teachers to Columbia University, Teachers College. That was in 1930. And if you notice what happened after that, that's when I was in New York in 65, riots started to breaking out. So the students were now rioting. There was Kent State and, this and all that. So I'm watching this. This is, oh my God. So it came in 2 stages. That was stage 1 was 1930, when the teachers went to Columbia University. Today, Columbia University is the heartbed, the heat bed. It's a horrible place. It's woke, completely woke, gender bending. It's not about education anymore. It's indoctrination.
Right.
Stage 2 happened when my friend Donald Trump and this is my friend here. When he got taken down as president, that was stage 2. And then I knew what Marx had written in 1848 was now true in America. But you and I have been seeing it coming all these years. And so that's why I'll say this was transformation. Will you give me $5 for this? And they'll find out how bad their education is. When they don't know why they would give me $5 for this, their education's bad. It's flawed.
Right. And so were you happy to see Elon do those things to Twitter?
Well, I think, Brian, you and I are fighters. The Marine, I was a U.S. Marine, flew the gunship, killed a lot of people, lost a lot of friends. But I like fighting.
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.